To you, Seth.
Good morning to you.
Seth, how are you?
I'm fine.
Well, first let's start. How is Kenyan this morning?
Well, Kenya this morning, people are still trying to recover and come to terms with the event of June the 25th, which was yesterday. There were countrywide protests, and it turned out to be violent. Deaths were reported, and some of these deaths came from were as a result of both live and rubber bullets. But protesters were shot at, and also some police officers were also injured in this particular confrontation between protesters who were protesting against the passage of the Finance Bill 2024 by Parliament yesterday.
You said so, but how many people have died?
What is happening in Kenya? It's a bit calm at the moment. So very heavy police deployment. Remember that just yesterday, last night, after countrywide protests, what happened is that the Minister for Defense, that is Aden Duale, through a Gazette notice, did indicate that the Kenya Defense Forces, that is the military, will be deployed to assist the police in protecting both civilians and also key government infrastructure, including state houses and state lodges spread across the country. There was extensive damage yesterday, both in the capital, Nairobi, and also all the 8 other regions. There have been damage to property. There have been damage to critical infrastructure such as roads, highways, bridges, and all that. What is happening right now is some sort of cleanup, some sort of restoration, and at the moment, the situation is still tense. Many people have not returned to work. Many businesses remain shut, and it's just now a matter of damage assessment and control. But the situation still is still tense following that announcement by the Minister for Defense, that is Aden Duale, who did indicate through a Gazette notice that the military is now being deployed. And as a matter of fact, the military, that is the Kenya Defense Forces, they have been spotted at one of the state houses, that is the Nakuru State House. Nakuru is just the county adjacent to Kiambu, and then now you have Nairobi. So you have this particular critical government infrastructure. The presence of the military is already being seen and felt there. So on the streets also, there's minimum activity. Many people have chosen not to go to work, like I said, or go to their businesses. So traffic is minimal. But also there's activity in major hospitals and around, and especially in the capital, where many other people are being treated due to injuries involved during this particular protest that were witnessed yesterday.
So this was nationwide. It was not limited to the capital.
It was nationwide. It was countrywide protests.
How did all this start? And give us an idea. What is in this Finance Bill 2024 that is attracting nationwide protests to the extent that damage, injuries, deaths have been recorded?
Okay, so this particular protest actually was arguably started by the youth, the young people, the Generation Z. They call themselves Gen Zs, and what actually fueled this particular protest, because remember, we've had quite a number of finance bills. Each and every year you have a finance bill that actually now facilitates the budget that the country has. So what was unique this year is that this particular finance bill, there were proposals that were very contentious, and these tax proposals, touched on issues affecting the youth. For example, there were tax proposals of an increment of taxes on digital content, and you remember also that many of these young people generate their income from content creation. So when there was a proposal to increase digital tax from 10% to about 20% thereabout, this one now really prompted these young people to openly protest against this particular tax proposal, not only through social media, but also through the mandatory public participation exercise that was undertaken by the parliamentary committee in charge of drafting, or in charge of collecting views from the public. The National Assembly Finance and Planning Committee did conduct a 2-week public hearing and participation exercise, where the youth there also came to express their dissatisfaction with some of the recommendations of this particular finance bill 2024. And also remember that also there were proposals on basic commodity taxes on basic commodities such as bread. There was a proposal of a 16% value added tax, that is a VAT on bread. Remember that as it stands, and for a very long time, this particular tax on bread has been basically either exempted or zero rated. So they propose to have a 16% on bread, which is considered a very basic commodity in Kenya, really angered especially these young people. There was also a proposal on eco-levy, basically environmental levy, which also proposed that taxes to go up in products such as sanitary pads and diapers. And so this one also elicited a lot of rage among not only young people, but many Kenyans who use some of these products also in every day of their lives, and they saw that the government is now going too much in effecting taxes. And so remember that this is just coming a year after also a very controversial tax was effected through the finance bill 2023. This was the housing levy tax. As we speak in Kenya, each and every salaried employee is deducted 1.5% of their salary that goes towards a housing tax. There was debate about this. Others well, some also stated and said that, and so it was a very controversial tax proposal, but, it managed to pass, without this countrywide protest. That was last year. But now this year, it appears that, mostly the youth, were very much angered by these tax proposals, and they vowed. And so you asked how it all started. Well, I tell you, it started from online, from social media. There were posters, going down social media saying, calling upon youth and everyone reject the Finance Bill 2024. They went a notch higher by even now starting engaging individual members of parliament. They managed somehow to get their contacts, and these particular members of parliament also confessed to having, being approached by, people for the very first time directly through their mobile contacts, and they're being told, do not pass the Finance Bill 2024. It is against the will of Kenyans. And so now, apart from the social media engagement, now there were posters also went down, now calling upon young people to come out to the streets and to demonstrate and, to tell the members of parliament that this is not in their interest. And, they now started a movement called Occupy Parliament. And so yesterday, the June 25th, was the climax of this particular hashtag Occupy Parliament, because that daring move was made yesterday, and these protesters managed to occupy Parliament. But as a result, many deaths were registered, many injured, and there's been extensive damage to property.
And it's interesting the kind of conversations the youth have had with both Parliament and the parliamentarians in an attempt to get this reversed. What triggered the protest? Is it the youth getting a clear indication that the parliamentarians were going to go ahead even though they've spoken to them? What necessitated this? Because if you had those engagements, you should at least expect some results.
Yeah, exactly. And you see, the parliamentarians were on record stating that they're going to vote for the bill. And they gave their own reasons. They said, a budget has to be facilitated. How does government collect revenue? It is through taxes. And they replied and they responded to these demands from the youth. And they did that through press conferences. They did that on weekends when they attended church services, and also those political engagements. But the youth were very intentional, and they said, the taxes that this nation, or rather the government collects, is enough. And so the youth could not hear them anymore. And these particular parliamentarians, in fact, implemented what they were saying, because remember that the bill as we speak, the Finance Bill 2024, has already been passed. It was passed by 195 MPs against about 105 through the third reading. When it came to the second reading last week on Thursday, it was passed by 204 members of parliament against 115 MPs who opposed it. So what might have triggered yesterday's massive protest was the fact that 204 members of parliament went on to pass the Finance Bill 2024 against the wishes of what you'd arguably say were the wishes of the majority, who are now young people. Remember that most of them also expressed their anger, saying that they are unemployed, and these particular taxes affect them directly. So the passage of the Finance Bill 2024, which is now waiting for the president assent within 7 days, according to the Constitution, could have triggered this particular massive nationwide, countrywide, never to have been witnessed in the history of this country. And so another fear is that now, what if the president, accents this particular bill into law by signing it? What could happen next? So that is where we are right now.
And you're talking about the president. You said a minister has spoken. I'm not so clear. You said a defense minister has spoken. Has the president uttered a word in the midst of all this?
The moment the Minister for Defense issued a Gazette notice stating that now the military will be deployed to protect critical government infrastructure and civilians. The president did issue a State of the Nation address last night at around 9 p.m. East Africa time. And the president did say that it was an unfortunate event. He did castigate what he called the planners and financiers of this particular nationwide protest. He did say that those particular demonstrations could actually be equated to a treason act. And he said that it was treasonous, whatever happened in the country yesterday. So the president there was tough talking, stating that, everyone must abide to the rule of law and that the government will take all it takes to protect the law, to protect the lives of civilians, and also to protect development, which now includes government infrastructure, such as the parliamentary buildings, such as the State House, state lodges, and also road infrastructure and the like. So the president did speak yesterday. However, the president did not mention the fate of the Finance Bill 2024, which is actually the cause of everything that is happening. Neither did the president also talk about some of the victims, the casualty, the damage that these particular protests have caused. So yes, the president did make a very short address to the nation last night, but many are viewing it as a very tough talking head of state, saying he's going to deal with those who are behind the protests.
Interesting. Are those behind the protest that identifiable? Are they easy to find?
Well, you see, what has made this protest unique and what you could call sporadic is the fact that there is no leader. It is not a political protest. We've had political protest by the opposition before here in Kenya. We've had the opposition wing being led by the former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, who, when such engagements were happening, the government and the head of state would, in particular call the leader of opposition out, for the happenings in regards to demonstrations. But you see, this particular protest, there is no visible leader. What we've seen is a culmination of human rights group activists, digital content creators. We've also seen, professionals from various backgrounds, lawyers, doctors, all in this. We've had a conversation on social media, most notably on X, on the X space conversations. And, when I had an opportunity to be part or just to listen in that particular space conversation last Saturday, that had actually over 55,000 listeners, and you could tell that these people are from various professionals background. So there's no formidable leader where you can point out and say, that you are the one who started all this movement. It is not easy to identify. What we know is that there have been young people who call themselves also digital activists. There have been also young people who are both in the civil society. Some are also human rights groups, also including a former Chief Justice, William Mutunga. So it is not a political movement, and so it is very hard to pick out and to identify that you are the planners, you are the financiers, but that is now the prerogative of the investigative agencies now to take it up and, to implement what the president thinks that this is a well-financed and planned movement or revolution.
So at this point, based on what you're learning as a journalist and your understanding of how all this has unfolded, you cannot even tell whether or not these protests are over, whether they will happen again. All is dependent on the kind of conversations that I had online.
Exactly. It is very hard even to tell, because remember that they're not political announcements at all, and that these have been happening very sporadic, and that is why I think also the security agencies have been caught flat-footed or unawares, because it is usually a wait and see. Remember that it all started by a hashtag, Reject Finance Bill 2024, that circulated on social media. And then this particular bill went ahead and it was passed by Parliament. And now it's turned out to be, come out to the streets, let's demonstrate. So as it appears, is very unpredictable. You never know how the reaction will be if the president goes ahead to sign the Finance Bill 2024 into law, now that for it to become an act. So it is very hard to tell. There is no coordination. There is no one who's been even calling for press conferences and to say, now this is our next step, this is our next move. So it is a matter of actually wait and see.
Very, very interesting. Sir, thank you very much for speaking to us. I'm guessing this might not be our last conversation as Kenya counts the cost and try to return to some form of normalcy. Sir, we wish you all the best and kindly take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Seth Olale.